Welcome to Shatter.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. She looked me in the eye across the kitchen table, her voice flat, her tone rehearsed, and said the words she must have been waiting weeks to deliver. My body, my rules. No hesitation, no warmth, just cold finality, as if she had been saving this line like a weapon. For a moment, I sat still, my fingers resting lightly on the rim of my coffee cup. Then I nodded once, not in agreement, but in clarity, because right then, I knew exactly what my reply would be. Not spoken in that moment, not shouted in desperation, but carried in silence until it landed with precision. My exit, my choice. The irony was sharp. For years, I had been the one carrying the invisible weight, working extra hours, fixing every leak and broken lock, keeping her life cushioned while she slowly erased me from it. And now, after all that, she framed her detachment as empowerment. She wanted independence. She wanted control. Then she was about to have it in ways she never expected. That night, I didn't argue. I didn't ask her to explain. I let her scroll on her phone until midnight, her face lit by the glow of other people's validation, while I lay on my side of the bed staring at the ceiling. Not angry, not broken, just finished. The next morning, I brewed 1 cup of coffee, just for me. For years, it had been a ritual, 2 mugs side by side, cream in hers, black in mine. But now, the second mug stayed in the cabinet. She noticed. I saw the flicker in her eyes as she walked past the counter, saw the empty space where her cup used to be. She didn't say a word, but the silence between us grew heavy. At work, I spent the afternoon moving quietly, methodically. Accounts, passwords, access points, closing doors she didn't even know were open. I wasn't making threats. I wasn't giving warnings. I was making decisions. Each keystroke was a step further out of her orbit, a step closer to the freedom she didn't realize she had handed me. That evening, she tried to act normal. She asked about my day, her voice casual, too casual. I gave her one-word answers, nothing more. The performance frustrated her. I could see it in the way her lips tightened, the way her hands fidgeted with the hem of her shirt. She was waiting for the old me to reappear, the man who would beg for closeness, who would try to fix what she had already broken. But that man was gone. Because the truth was simple. If her body was hers alone, then my freedom was mine alone too. And the choice I was about to make would be the last one she ever expected. The second morning came with a new kind of silence. She lingered by the kitchen counter, waiting for her coffee. I didn't make it. I poured my own and walked past her without a word. For years, I had been predictable, her safety net, her steady hand, her unshakable routine. Now, each small act I withdrew felt like a crack forming under her feet. She didn't comment, but her eyes followed me, wide with something she hadn't felt in a long time: uncertainty. At work, I was sharper than I'd been in months. My coworkers joked that I looked like a man with a secret, and they weren't wrong. I was moving pieces behind the curtain, quiet and deliberate. I met with HR, adjusted my benefits, and ensured that what was mine would no longer be tethered to her. I called the bank, set up private accounts, and shifted balances out of reach. Not a single word was said at home about it. She wouldn't even know until the ground was gone beneath her. That evening, she tried again. She set the table for 2, candles lit, the illusion of a cozy dinner waiting. I walked in, saw the effort, and sat down without expression. She asked how my day was. I told her it was fine. Nothing more. She filled the air with stories about her gym, about her coworkers, about a new recipe she wanted to try. Her words bounced off me like rain on glass. I wasn't hostile, but I wasn't present either. I had already left in ways she couldn't see yet. By the third day, her frustration showed. She asked if something was wrong, her tone sharper now, less controlled. I looked her in the eye, calm as stone, and told her nothing was wrong. Because for me, nothing was. I wasn't struggling. I wasn't drowning. I was choosing, and that terrified her more than any argument ever could. That night, I lay in bed with my back to her. She shifted beside me, restless, sighing louder than necessary, waiting for me to ask what was wrong. I didn't. Eventually, she reached out, her fingers brushing my arm. I stayed still. Not cold, not cruel, just unmoved. Her hand lingered a moment before retreating. In the dark, I could almost hear her realizing the truth. The distance she once demanded had finally arrived, but not on her terms. She had said her body was hers alone. I was beginning to show her that my freedom was mine alone too. And with each passing day, I was pulling further out of reach, until soon, I wouldn't just be silent. I would be gone. By the end of that week, the balance had shifted. She was no longer walking through the house with confidence, no longer tossing her words like weapons. Instead, she hovered near me, her presence cautious, almost nervous. She started small, comments about the weather, about groceries, about how quiet I'd been lately. I gave her the same steady answer each time: silence, or a word or two that ended the conversation before it began. On Saturday, she tried something new. She dressed up in a way she hadn't in years. Makeup carefully done, hairstyled, a dress she used to wear when she wanted my full attention. She sat across from me at dinner, smiling, waiting for me to notice. I ate quietly, thanked her for the food, and excused myself without a second glance. The mask slipped. I saw it in her eyes, the sudden flash of panic she couldn't hide. She had thought allure would still control me. She was wrong. That night, she climbed into bed and moved close, her hand brushing against mine, her voice soft as she whispered that she missed us. I stayed still, my breathing steady, my body unmoved. Not cold, not angry, just detached. She pulled back, rolling to her side, and I listened to her restless shifting until sleep finally broke her down. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the ache of rejection. I felt nothing at all, and that was more powerful than any revenge could ever be. Sunday morning, I made changes she couldn't ignore. I boxed up old photos, framed smiles that once decorated our walls, and carried them to the garage. When she asked what I was doing, her voice sharp with fear, I told her simply that it was time for a clean slate. Nothing more. She stood frozen, her hands gripping the edge of the counter, realizing that the memories she thought defined us were now just objects to me, objects I no longer needed. By Monday, she was unraveling. She lingered in doorways, watching me with wide, searching eyes. She asked if we could talk, if we could reset, if maybe she had been too harsh before. I listened quietly and then told her I was fine. That was all. No promises, no comfort, no invitation. Just calm finality. And in that silence, she finally saw what she had created. She had demanded freedom, control, autonomy. Now she had it. But she hadn't expected that I would claim my own. By the second week, my detachment had become more than silence. It was strategy. I wasn't just pulling away emotionally. I was cutting ties she didn't even know existed. Each day, I moved with precision. Bank accounts rerouted, subscriptions canceled, documents quietly shifted to a safe place she would never touch. These weren't angry gestures. They were deliberate steps toward freedom. Tuesday evening, I came home later than usual. She was waiting in the living room, dressed neatly, her hair styled, her posture stiff like she was bracing for impact. By Wednesday, she had shifted tactics again. She started cooking meals she never used to bother with, filling the house with the smell of dishes I once loved. I sat at the table, ate quietly, and thanked her without warmth. She tried to spark conversation, asking if I remembered the first time she made that meal, the night we laughed until midnight. I nodded once and went back to eating. The memory that once tied us together now fell flat, a reminder that the past couldn't be resurrected. Her smile faltered. For the first time, she looked small in her own home. That night, I packed a box. Not everything. Just the essentials, important documents, a few clothes, the pieces of my life that mattered only to me. I carried it to my car while she watched from the window, her face pale, her hands pressed to the glass like she could hold me inside with sheer willpower. She didn't ask what I was doing. Maybe she already knew. On Friday, I made my move quieter but sharper. I deleted shared photos, wiped old albums, cleared out the digital traces of us. Years of memories gone in minutes, like they had never existed. She came into the room later, holding her phone, her eyes wide, asking why the pictures were gone. I told her calmly, it was time. Nothing more. She didn't argue. She just stood there, her breath uneven, realizing that I was erasing the life she thought would always be hers to control. She once told me her body was her rule. Now she was learning that my exit was mine. And every silent step I took made that truth impossible for her to ignore. By the middle of the second week, the house no longer belonged to her illusions. I had started pulling out the threads of comfort she thought were permanent. The first was money. I cut off the joint credit card she used for her online shopping, canceled the little luxuries that had once arrived at our doorstep like clockwork. When she asked if I had noticed a mistake with the billing, I told her calmly that there was no mistake. I had decided to stop funding things that didn't include me. Her lips parted in shock, but no words came. The next change came quietly. I stopped filling the gas tank in her car, something I had done for years without her even asking. On Monday morning, she stormed into the kitchen, keys in hand, her voice sharp, asking why the car was empty when she had a meeting across town. I sipped my coffee and told her I didn't realize I was still responsible for that. The look on her face was priceless, not anger, but the first flicker of fear. She was starting to see what independence really felt like when the safety net was gone. That evening, she paced the living room, scrolling her phone furiously, calling her sister. I overheard pieces of the conversation, the way she painted me as distant, cold, punishing her. What she didn't say, of course, was that she had pushed me there herself, that her line, my body, my rules, was the spark that had burned the last bridge between us. By Wednesday, she had grown restless. She tried to win me back through the people around us. A mutual friend messaged me, asking if everything was okay because she had been posting vague quotes online about disappointment, about betrayal, about how people change. I didn't reply. I didn't defend myself. I let her shape her narrative while I quietly erased myself from it. Thursday night, she tried again to bridge the distance. She brought out wine, set 2 glasses on the table, and asked if we could sit together. I looked at the glasses, then at her, and told her I was heading to bed. No argument, no fight, just finality. She stood there, frozen, watching me walk away, her silence echoing louder than her words ever had. By the weekend, the shift was undeniable. She had thought control was hers. But I had shown her that my exit was mine alone. And with every move, she wasn't just losing me. She was losing the life she thought I would always keep intact for her. By the third week, the silence between us had grown too loud for her to bear. She was no longer pretending, no longer hiding behind casual comments or forced smiles. Now her voice trembled when she spoke, her movements quick and restless, like she was living on borrowed time. Monday night, I came home to find her sitting on the couch, knees pulled to her chest, mascara streaked down her face. She looked up at me, eyes red, and said she couldn't do this anymore. She admitted she had been wrong, that she had pushed too far, that maybe she had been testing me because she never thought I would actually walk away. I listened without moving, without responding, my expression calm. When she finished, I told her I was fine. That was it. No promises, no comfort. Her lips trembled as if she wanted to scream, but instead she just buried her face in her hands. The next day, she tried a different tactic. She followed me around the house, asking if I was seeing someone else, asking if there was another reason for my distance. I gave her nothing, just silence or short replies that ended the conversation before it began. The truth was, she wasn't competing with another person. She was competing with the freedom she had unknowingly given me, and it was a fight she could never win. By Wednesday, she broke completely. I heard her crying in the bathroom, her voice cracking, her sobs muffled behind the door. For years, I had been the one to knock, to step in, to comfort her when life overwhelmed her. This time, I stayed in the living room, letting her drown in the emptiness she had created. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't punishing her. I was simply done carrying what was never mine to hold. Thursday evening, she made one last attempt. She came into the bedroom in a dress she hadn't worn in years, perfume lingering in the air, her body angled toward me in silent invitation. I glanced at her once, turned off the light, and rolled over. She stood there for a moment, waiting, before finally slipping under the covers on her side of the bed. The silence was absolute. By Friday, she was texting me during the day, messages she never used to send. I miss you. Can we talk tonight? Please, don't give up on us. I read them, let them sit unanswered, and went about my day. Because she had once said her body was hers alone. And now, I was showing her that my exit was mine alone too. By the weekend, I had stopped seeing her as my wife. She was simply a figure moving through the same rooms, a ghost of a role she had already abandoned long before she realized it. I began stripping away the last remnants of our shared life, not in rage, but with precision. Saturday morning, I opened the safe in my office and removed what was mine: documents, passports, insurance policies, everything that mattered beyond her reach. I packed them neatly into a folder and placed it in my car. She saw me carry it out, her eyes narrowing, her lips parting as if she wanted to ask, but she stayed silent. Maybe she already knew. That afternoon, I cleaned out my closet. I left her things untouched, but pulled my own clothes, suits, and shoes, folding them carefully into a suitcase. She stood in the doorway, her arms crossed, trying to look indifferent, but her eyes betrayed her, wide, searching, desperate. She finally asked if I was going somewhere. I told her calmly, "I'm organizing." Nothing more. She clenched her jaw, but said nothing. Sunday, I spent the day outside the house. I walked along the river, stopped at an old diner, places I hadn't been in years. The air felt lighter, my steps freer. I was rediscovering pieces of myself she had buried under years of indifference. By the time I returned, it was late, and she was waiting at the window again. Her eyes scanned me, her voice sharp, demanding to know where I had been. I answered with one word: out. That word carried more weight than any argument. It was the sound of a man she no longer controlled. Monday morning, I took the final step she never expected. I scheduled a meeting with my lawyer. The papers had been ready, sitting quietly in a folder, waiting for me to make the call. I set the appointment for later that week. It was no longer about what she wanted or the rules she declared. It was about my choice, my freedom, my exit. That evening, she tried one last card. She softened her voice, asked if we could start fresh, if maybe we had both made mistakes. I looked at her, calm, unshaken, and told her I was fine. No invitation, no forgiveness, just the truth. She had once thought she could dictate the terms of our marriage. But now she was learning, piece by piece, that I was dictating the terms of its end. By the fourth week, her confidence had evaporated. She was no longer the woman who had sat across from me, declaring her rules with pride. Now she was pacing the house, eyes darting to me as if searching for a lifeline. But I wasn't offering one. I was already gone, moving with the calm precision of someone who had made his choice long ago. Monday morning, I met with my lawyer. The papers were finalized in under an hour. Divorce, property division, accounts, all drawn clean, all airtight. I left that office lighter than I had felt in years. The marriage she thought she still had time to reconsider had already ended on paper. When I walked through the door that evening, she was waiting. Dinner was set, candles lit, her best attempt at restoring something long dead. She spoke softly, asking if we could start over, that maybe we had both said things we didn't mean. I listened without interruption, let her pour out every desperate word. When she finished, I simply told her, "It doesn't matter anymore." Her face froze. She blinked hard, searching for something to hold on to, but found nothing in me. Tuesday, I began the final cleanse. I deleted the last digital remnants of us, shared albums, messages, accounts. I erased years and minutes, leaving nothing for her to scroll back through when nostalgia struck. When she noticed, her voice cracked as she asked why the photos were gone. I told her, because they don't mean anything now. That silence between us afterward was suffocating, and for the first time, she didn't try to fill it. By Thursday, she was unraveling in front of me. She followed me from room to room, asking if there was someone else, asking if I had already replaced her. I gave her nothing. She wasn't fighting another woman. She was fighting the version of me that no longer needed her. That was a battle she couldn't win. Friday night, I packed the last of my belongings. Documents, clothes, essentials, all placed neatly in my car. She stood in the doorway, pale, trembling, her voice cracking as she asked if I was leaving. I didn't answer. I closed the trunk, walked inside, and left her standing in the dark. She once thought her words gave her power, but now, as the days drained away, she realized the truth. The power had never been hers. It was mine, and I had already used it to choose my exit. The last week began with a silence so sharp it felt like a blade. She moved around me carefully, as if the wrong word might shatter what little was left. But there was nothing left to shatter. I had already filed the papers. I had already erased the past. The only thing remaining was the moment she realized she no longer had a choice. On Tuesday, she tried one final performance. She waited at the table, candles lit, her best dress clinging to her frame, her makeup heavy enough to mask the panic in her eyes. She smiled when I walked in, forced brightness in her voice as she said she wanted to talk, that she had decided she was ready to commit, that she wanted me after all. She looked so certain, as if her words could rewind the last month. I let her speak. I let her spill every line she thought would pull me back. And when she finally stopped, waiting for my reaction, I gave her the truth. I told her it didn't matter anymore. She blinked hard, her mouth falling open, her hands trembling against the table. She whispered that she was choosing me now, that she was ready to give me everything I had been asking for. I looked at her, calm and steady, and told her she was too late. Her face crumbled. The woman who once thought she could dictate the terms of our marriage now sat in ruins, realizing her decision had no weight. She had gambled on my patience, and she had lost. That night, she tried again. She followed me into the bedroom, her voice breaking as she asked if I still loved her. I told her nothing. I switched off the light, rolled onto my side, and left her in the dark with the silence she had created. By Thursday, she was unraveling publicly. Her friends called me, saying she was confused, upset, asking what had happened. I didn't answer. I didn't explain. I let her tell whatever story she needed to survive, while I quietly walked away from the wreckage. Friday, I loaded the last box into my car. She stood at the door, her face streaked with tears, begging me to stay. I didn't respond. I shut the trunk, walked past her without a glance, and left. She had once declared her body was her rule, and now she finally understood. My exit was mine, and it had already begun. The morning I left for good, the house was still. No arguments, no final speeches, no tears from me. I had packed the last of my things the night before, each step measured, each decision deliberate. When I set my keys on the counter, I did it without hesitation. That sound was the final mark, the end of a story that had dragged on far too long. She woke as I was loading the car. Her face was pale, her hair tangled, the weight of sleepless nights etched into her eyes. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed tightly, like she was holding herself together by force. She asked where I was going, her voice breaking. I didn't answer. I shut the trunk, walked past her, and kept moving. Inside, she followed me through the hallway, her steps frantic, her words tumbling out in half-broken sentences. She said we could fix it, that she was willing to change, that she was finally ready to give what I had been asking for all along. But the truth was simple. I no longer wanted it. I wasn't leaving because of what she withheld. I was leaving because of what I had finally reclaimed myself. I paused at the door, looking back at her one last time. She stood there trembling, eyes wet, lips trembling, waiting for me to say something that would give her hope. I gave her nothing. No anger, no comfort, no explanation, just silence. The drive away was calm, the road stretching out in front of me like it had been waiting all this time. I felt no grief, no second-guessing, no temptation to turn back. For years, I had been trapped in a cycle of trying, of carrying, of fixing. Now I was free. Each mile between us felt like a piece of armor sliding back into place, shielding me from the past. She had once looked me in the eye and said, "My body, my rules." I had nodded because she was right, but she never expected the answer I carried in silence until the end. My exit, my choice. And now that choice had been made. When she walked back into that house alone, she stepped into the silence she had built herself. And in that silence, she would finally hear the truth, that sometimes the loudest goodbye is the one spoken without a single word. What would you have done in my place? If the story hit you, leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe. It only gets stronger from here.